This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Laddick, and I'm your host from Open LMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in edtech, spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And Open LMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver effective, customized, and engaging learning experiences for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the eLearn podcast. As you have heard now multiple times, my name's Laddick, and I work for a company called Open LMS right up here. But this show is not about me. This show is about the person who is on the screen with me right now, who I'm very excited to meet and get to know better, and actually have this talk around this future of what learning could look like. Bobbi Macdonald, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Laddick.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. Where do we find you sitting in the world today? It looks sunny. It looks nice.
I know it's very sunny here. I'm in a little sun porch.
Yeah.
And I am in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Excellent.
Yeah.
You are with an organization called Education Reimagined, which is obviously a perfect title for what we're going to be discussing here. Tell us about what that organization is, what it does, where you sit in it, and, kind of the work that you do.
Sure. Education Reimagined is a nonprofit that was founded by bringing together a diverse group of people with a wide range of beliefs about education. And it was started as a thought experiment. And they brought folks together around a table and said, let's just put down for 1 minute, like the things that divide us, and really talk about like learning and what we really believe about how people learn. And then from there, it grew into over like 18 months, this vision of education, which was at the heart of it, learner agency at the very heart. And then socially embedded, that we learn in community, personalized, relevant, contextualized, like it matters who you are, what your story is. That's where you begin. And then open walled, the community is the playground for learning. So Education Reimagined then became an organization that decided, well, let's catalyze that and share that, and also find folks who are already doing that work. And so they became a catalyst organization and built a community and really worked together with folks on the ground to say, what do we really mean by learner-centered education? Those things just talking about. For the folks who are already really doing it, what's true? What do we need to think about? What's important? And so that's how it was founded, and that's the work they've been doing. And now we've really moved forward. My title is Senior Partner for Ecosystems Growth and Advancement. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
I was going to say, I just love that. That's great.
I know, let's dive in. And so what they found is that if you wanted to make those components really come true, in order to deliver it, you need to have an ecosystem, a different kind of approach to how we would organize and credential and think about learning together. And so what we've been doing is now looking through that lens of the ecosystem with folks. And so that's who the organization is. And I can talk more about the work, but it's amazing to be in the position to talk to so many people around the country and the world who want to think and care passionately about really centering education on seeing every child as powerful, capable, loving, and as a important participant in society, in community.
I love it. No, absolutely. That was my first question was, do you get to get outside sort of the bubble of the United States? And, is this truly like a global perspective? And what what does that look? What does that look like right now in terms of the different cultures and countries that you're touching and discussing and talking with?
I want to say we really are focused on the USA. We're right
Mhm.
here, but we can't help but to be connected with folks around the globe because the idea of approaching education through this lens of community-based learning, developing an ecosystem, really is all around the world right now, and there's great folks working on it. And I think the reason for that, there's probably a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons is that education becomes the backbone infrastructure to something much more than just academics.
Mhm.
We've
Mhm.
always thought about children's career pathways, for example, but this idea of the ecosystem, of having it be community based and to have a strong network of folks, like, it does something else. It's a bigger idea of what it could be.
And I cannot wait to get super meta with you about this as well. But what I love is that when you proposed this to me, pardon me, about to lose my voice here. One second. When you proposed this to me, your question was ultimately what would equitable, community-based, learner-centered ecosystems make available for children's families and communities? I want to start there. Like, paint me the vision of what either when you go out and talk to a new community or you have somebody come into your pipeline that's interested in having this discussion. And I'd love to hear both like the elevator pitch as well as sort of the deeper conversation around that. Like how do you get somebody hooked on this to be like, yeah, I want to learn more?
um, you know what? I think what we should do, Laddick, is actually just take a moment and clear the space for that vision.
Ooh.
What
Mhm.
we have is and I'm a long-term early childhood educator. I had a chance to co-create and design a network of schools in Baltimore City. And
Oh,
for,
okay.
25 years, we raised our children there. Our kids went through the schools, and those schools were embedded in the community in a certain way. And they were the City Neighbors is the name of the schools, and but part of my role, at that time as executive director of City Neighbors was to kind of hold the system at bay so that we could operate the way we really wanted to. And by that, I mean,
The system being sort of the traditional education system, the government regulator, that kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
the conditions we were in, the context we were in, the regulations were all kind of designed for, efficiency, designed like in that industrial kind of model. So if we can, that's what I mean by clearing the space. Just for a second, let's put that down and just
Sure.
say, like, how could we really do it if we really started with children's interests and stories and who they were, and then said, now, what kind of system would we need that would really allow us to operate that way? I worked with so many teachers over the years, amazing, amazing teachers, and they had constraints that they were working within, like including the way we scheduled time, like 45-minute blocks. And if I asked a group of teachers, like, if you could really let go of that constraint and spend your time with the kids and be able to follow their interests and help navigate learning journeys, what could you imagine?
Hmm.
That's the kind of conversations we've been having around the country with different communities. And so I guess what I'm saying is when we clear the space, first of all, we have to like recognize that we're in a system that was designed for another era. We're in the midst of stepping into this new era of a different kind of information, a different kind of economy that values different um, characteristics of learners. And so now, how would we organize it? What kind of system do we need? Like, allow yourself to imagine that.
I love it. No, okay. That is a wonderful place to start. I need to try to I need to put on my suit of someone who lives in Chicago, right? Or lives in a suburb of Chicago, right? Just to make sure that we can have a conversation. I really want to pull this out and draw this out because as anybody who's listened to this podcast before knows, I've had the privilege of living around the world, right? And so my kids do have this kind of designed educational experience. So my question to you is, if I'm that parent in, a suburb of Las Vegas, what are those constraints or a teacher, I guess both, like, what are those constraints that I'm feeling every day usually? And you just mentioned one, sort of like the manufactured, time piece, where it's like, hey, we've got to have these seven, here's the 7 subjects we got to teach every day. Like, could you give me what are the top 4 or 5 things that people struggle with to let go in this first part of the conversation?
What we've heard from parents and what parents have reported, and with other folks who have really been listening, and you can see evidence of this too, is that they really do want a customized approach. Like that we know now through learning science that every learner is different, that people learn in different ways, that kids have different ways of thriving. Well, parents want that for their children. And you have 3 kids, I have 4 kids, however many you have, each one of them is different.
Yeah, 100%. And it couldn't get more obvious as they get older, right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. During the pandemic, when parents self-organized into different kinds of learning pods and groups, some of those were really exciting to people. But in a report by SERPI, the Center for Reinventing Public Education, they also reported that the problem of those self-organizing pods were that parents couldn't rely on them. Like they didn't have the reliability and the trust of a system. And so they need that. Parents need to have
Absolutely.
reliability and a system. They need to be able to individualize for their child. And then one other thing we hear a lot is, I would like to be part of it. I'd like to be engaged. I don't know exactly how, there's a lot of studies or people who have been exploring family engagement or parent engagement. And I think the idea of creating an ecosystem offers new pathways for bringing that kind of engagement, individualized instruction for kids, and a system that you could rely on and trust.
And I hope this isn't a curveball question already, 5 minutes into our conversation here, but again, just only because I'm lucky enough to have experiences from other parts of the world. What you described sounds like something that some of our friends have described in, especially like Northern Europe, like Scandinavian countries.
Yeah.
We definitely experienced those pieces in Thailand when we lived there. Now, granted, it was a very privileged international private system, right? So you definitely had to be able to get access to that. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a public system, but definitely like Scandinavian public systems. Yes. Are there other places in the world where you could point someone right now and be like, that's what we're talking about? Like, do you have that opportunity or no?
The thing that's really amazing is America is so diverse. That's what we're founded on, the idea of bringing us all together. and um, and and that can be our greatest strength, right? So we could point to other places in the world where these kind of ecosystems are growing, but I'd rather talk about some places here
Ooh,
where they are growing.
yeah.
And I can't point to one and say, that's it, that's a full demonstration. I'd like to say what we need to do is create some full demonstrations in order to make this come to life for more children. The challenge that we have is we can look around and find school models, programs, like out of school time coordinators, cities of learning. We can find examples where people are working collectively to create great learning experiences for kids, or to connect them with mentors and internships, to follow their interests, to create a portfolio for each child, to empower kids to know who they are, like what their gifts are and how to contribute them to the world. For example, Big Picture Learning.
Okay.
That is an amazing organization. It's been around 25 years. So they have been iterating all this time founded on the idea of knowing each child, putting them in small groupings. They call advisory. We would call a home base, where they're
Mhm.
really known and they stay together over years. So they've got that thing of, it matters that kids are known. It matters that they belong to a group, and that's socially embedded, socially constructed knowledge, and leaving to learn and learning to leave, like sending them out into the community, finding the mentors. Like big picture learning is a great homegrown example. And they have schools all over the place that have been, and worldwide, that have been like founded on these ideals, and they've been doing it, but it's not yet a demonstration of a public school system that knows how to do that.
Yeah, I love this. Oh, I love it because like what we're describing here is the tension that every parent has, every system has of, and you've already mentioned it, 2 minutes ago, where it's the tension between the need for resource abundance and stability at the same time, but also the ability for adaptability and iteration and individualization, right? Personalization. Incredibly complex tension there. What's that, like, what are you discovering in your research, in your conversations about, but here's the thing, we know it's possible. We have these things in our life, and I would maybe, I don't know, let me lead the horse here. Where it's like, I'm a parent, I've got these kids that are this age right here, and I can already hear other parents being like, oh, my kids go to school, I can't have a third job. You know what I mean? I've got my family, I've got my job, we've got some extracurriculars that we do, and then like I can't also be a full participant in this system too. Like I need to depend on you, right? So let me offer you that. Wasn't really a question, just sort of an observation there. Like
No,
tell me about that. Yeah.
I think you really are naming some of the tensions. And in the past 3 years, during the pandemic, I interviewed like 110 people, like finding people
Nice.
who wanted to think and talk about this, which was an interesting time to be interviewing people. And then we created a working group, and we like dove into what would it look like to have a system like this.
Mm.
And since then, we've also launched a cohort of folks who have pieces of that, who are doing that work of growing that kind of community. But what we have for public education is a system based on these older principles. What we don't have is a model or a demonstration of a system built on the kind of principles we're talking about, a living system, a system that's telling a new story. And that's why we call it an ecosystem, because of the life of it, that there's a dynamism to it, there's a fluidity to it. The part that you pointed out that I think is really important is like, what would the components be if it's every man on for themselves? A lot of times, some families navigate the current system by pulling together before care. They have the school, whatever that offers, after clubs, after school care, summer camps, right? Families do this all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
the families who are well off have the luxury of like having a very wide array of choices of what they can put together for their kids.
Yeah,
What we're
resources. Yeah, sure.
right,
Resources always make the problem seem doable, right? Anyway. Mhm.
right. Well, the problem is then, if you don't have those resources, your kids don't have access to that. And so this is
Mhm.
the idea of creating community based learner centered ecosystems, is to create a public school system that makes that kind of amazing series of experiences available to all kids, every kid.
Mhm. Mhm.
So one thing that we thought of as we were doing this work and meeting with different people and launching the cohort and learning from sites on the ground is we kind of identified the components like the home base or advisory, that everyone would belong to that. And then learning hubs are places where you go to learn and that are designed for your learning. And you could think of it like a great early childhood classroom is like a learning hub.
Sure.
And then you
Mhm.
would have those depending on ages, you could have those depending on interests. They could be maker spaces. A learning hub could be at a museum, it could be at libraries, it could be in the community, and different folks would have access to that and belong to those as well. Okay. And then you have field sites, which is, places where you do internships and mentorships. Those are businesses that have another mission, but they'd like to integrate youth into their work as, to make that connection, to offer, to develop the next workforce. They could have a lot of different reasons for doing that. So you would still have, I want to just call it custodial care.
Yeah.
You would
Which
still,
is, that pastoral / custodial care is a term no one in America has heard. Again, I've been lucky enough to hear that term an awful lot, but it's very interesting that you bring that up, because ultimately that's what we're talking about here, right? Where it's a care over the child in a very, I want to say, not a heavy-handed way, right? This isn't like I think many times the American brain, at least, would think it's sort of like, I'm going to direct and I'm going to, but where it's more like a nudge, it's more like a, like a, you should be doing this, or, hey, maybe let's go over this way, or, like, let's make sure you're actually on the track towards that learning objective kind of thing.
well, I think of it even just for yourself and like things that you are on a journey with for learning. In the advisory, you would have a facilitator who would help you navigate your learning journey and build your skills and knowledge to navigate your own learning journey. It's kind of like taking the best that we know from like indigenous culture of being connected and belonging and making meaning, and honoring yourself and your family and the land. Like, let's learn from that. Let's learn from the homeschool cooperatives that have used the community as the playground for long periods of time. Let's learn from public education that has said we are going to serve every single child. Let's pull those things together and create a system that can deliver on those promises.
Mm-hmm. I think that you interviewed a lot of people. You had a working group. This is something that you reach out to communities about. How does a seed get planted here? How does it get started? Because we're talking about it, again, if you had a total clean slate, if we were going to go set up a new city in a unincorporated county in Montana right now, that was, it's like, hey, look, this is we're going to go develop this. I could see how this would be possible, right? How do you start to insert yourself in a place that has 200 years of precedent and expectation and systems and bureaucracy and, muddling through to start to bloom? Or maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe you set up that, I don't know, maybe you have to have these clean, kind of clean slate opportunities that then organically grow into the old system. I don't know.
When you're talking about like how to make this vision come into reality.
Well, yeah, like it's got to start somewhere, right? So do
Yeah.
you start with, like, in your experience as
Yeah.
someone who thinks about this every day and is implementing and working on it, are there different entry paths? Is there one that is always the one that you should start with? Like, where's that
Okay.
moment that's like,
Yeah. I don't, this is, let me say this. We haven't inserted ourselves, like had to do that anywhere, because what we've been doing for these past 10 years is building a community of learner-centered sites and people and schools that are thinking about different aspects of this.
oh, cool.
And
Okay.
what we've done is engage with them and say, what else would you need to really bring it to life? And so, for example, Big Thought in Dallas, they run the Dallas City of Learning. They do this amazing out of school time, incredible work, and cross-sector partnerships, strategies for resource distribution. They have an established system for measuring impact. They have a micro-credentialing initiative. They've developed this creator archetype, and they're measuring those qualities that kids get in the after-school programming. And they're working with the Dallas Independent School District. to connect with them and to connect all of this up. When you hear the leaders from Big Thought talk about their work, Byron Sanders, Greg McPherson, Leanne Binder, Annie Wright from Southern Methodist University, that they're doing a data sharing, really neat platform with. When they talk about it, they're talking about weaving together experiences for kids that and making it so accessible to families. And so what I'm saying is two things. One is this is already emerging,
Right.
already happening in places. So when we connect with folks and they say, hey, will you come in and help us think about that? We ask them, what would you need to do what you're doing more? If you had real investment, what could you imagine establishing, and so but even that wouldn't be enough, Laddick. That's the thing. Like, we could keep doing what we're doing now, but it's not spreading. It's hard to spread something that is unique to its environment. We have to know what to scale and what not to scale. You see what I mean? Like, the beauty of the current system is like it's so efficient when everything is standardized.
Of
Right?
course.
We're
Yeah,
gonna
we know how to set up a new school building. We know how to hire new teachers. We know how to give them the Common Core curriculum. And here's how you structure a day. Here's what administrative principles. Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Is there a way to create that? And I'm not trying to push us towards a playbook, right? I'm not trying to push us in by any sense, but are there a set of clear principles, like the learner-centric, Bill of Rights, that it's like, hey, here's what an equitable, supportive, accessible public community of learning looks like. And these are the 10 components of it. And then, you can start to tease out from there. Is that something that you're working towards, or would that even be possible?
Yeah. The way that we're approaching it is we're saying, here's the heart of the idea. And I described it earlier, like that learner agency is at the heart of this: socially embedded, personalized, relevant, contextualized, open walled. And there are a lot of different ways to express all of that. But what we need is a system that will support those who are working to do that work. And so we've been finding folks in different contexts and saying, let's look at your context and say, what is allowing you to do this work? What's holding you back from doing this work?
Right.
And so what needs to change?
Other than financial resources, what are some of the typical challenges that you hear?
Well, when you imagine trying to really open the walls and let learning happen everywhere, transportation becomes like an infrastructure solution that is needed, right? And when you think about the learning in terms of like really cross-sector partnerships and all of that work, then it offers an opportunity to think of funding in new ways. And different communities have navigated their own. That one, we shouldn't go deep into that one for now, but that's one is so different depending on their context.
100%. Yeah.
Right? I mean, so we need to learn a lot. We need to learn a lot.
The first thing that popped into my head when you said transportation was, I was like, this is a perfect moment for Lyft and Uber and Didi and ride sharing systems to be like, we've got a solution for that. We've built a platform that could handle these needs. Now let's make it equitable and safe, right? Like, and something that parents can trust, that's a hell of a conversation.
Right. And some of the inventors like Iowa Big is opening a new community-based City View Community High School in Iowa, and they purposefully placed it downtown. They placed it and they put it like right in the Chamber of Commerce, like
nice.
Literally in their building. So it's like, if you think about using the spaces in the community in new ways, and if we're grouping advisories or home bases as smaller groupings, that becomes very possible. And so it's like the way we think of resources will need to change.
Which it seems like a great time to do that, right? With the coming out of the pandemic, with the digital economy, the advent of artificial intelligence, like we have the ability to leverage, for lack of a better term, these efficiencies and different pathways to potentially find ourselves with answers or potential answers, right?
Absolutely.
What
Yeah.
what do you do about the, or it's not what do you do, that we shouldn't ask that question. The question I want to ask is, I'm interested to hear in those 110 interviews you did and the communities that you talk with, both the parents and teachers and stuff like that. I'm always fascinated in the that sounds great, but let somebody else do it first, or not in my backyard conversation. How many of those do you have, or do you get that sense from these conversations?
I have not come across that anywhere.
Ooh, wow, that's awesome.
I just,
Wow.
I think because we're not coming with, do you want to do this? What we're doing is finding folks who are already doing some aspect of
Mm-hmm,
it
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and learning from them and hearing from them. And so it's just a different starting place. And part of the vision from Education Reimagined for these ecosystems of learning is that each one would be unique to the community. And so you start with creating a shared vision. So, for example, we worked with FabX, which is out of school time and summer program in Newport, Rhode Island, and Providence, Rhode Island.
Cool.
And just the most amazing community of folks, absolutely incredible, like serving folks who are underserved and marginalized, and really had the idea of starting right there in the neighborhood. Like, how do we connect with all of the blue economy, the folks connected to the water there in Rhode Island, and create opportunities for kids to learn that they wouldn't have access to, including, career opportunities. And this has grown. It started like as a small after school thing, and now it's grown and grown and grown. They're serving, hundreds of kids. But when we connected with their community and they said, let's come together and have this conversation, they started with three questions. One was, um, if we could really get there to this beautiful place that we're imagining, where our kids are having the whole community as playground of learning, they each are known for their unique gifts, and we've developed it. What would we see, hear, and do? And they like painted that picture together.
Mm.
And the
Mm.
people who were there, it was like mamas and papas, it was the pastor and his wife, it was like the superintendent, it was the guy who drives the bus, like it was everyone. So
Mhm.
they create this shared vision. And the second question was, remember what it used to be like? And then the third question was, what questions did we have to answer together to get us where we want to go?
Mm.
Right? Like that, those are the kind of conversations we've been in with people, and they have the vision, they have the knowledge. It's just to take the time together to come together and imagine, and then say, how will we do it together? That's what we need to do. And that will help each community develop for themselves the kind of ecosystem that makes sense, that can be sustainable, that serves the needs of that community. But still, even if we did that,
Yeah.
like, we would not necessarily have a transformed public education system. Like,
No, of course not. No, and well, so here's, I mean, I want to first pause and reflect and just say, because like I again had one of these. This is why I love my job, right? Like I just had one of these profound, moments as you're describing that I'm seeing this, multifaceted, time where this community comes together and they just take this collective deep breath and they pause and they say, look, one of the um one of the most difficult things in any of these conversations is just asking people to take that piece of time out, right? And come and contribute and actually contribute. But then, coming out of that conversation, it's what action steps could we do next, right? Like, and then committing to, again, taking on a piece of that action, or making the movement collectively to say, look, we're going to adjust, we're going to change. And then, change management itself, as we all know, is an incredibly difficult process for any organization, whatever. We're talking about education. So I just had that beauty, but I really wanted to focus on the ability for a community to take a collective breath and reflect and be very intentional about a next step, right? Like, I just don't see that happening so much in our world these days, right?
Yeah, well, come on over.
I want to hang out with you more, Bobbi.
There are absolutely people doing that, and they need investment. They do. And I think
Yeah.
that's part of our work at Education Reimagine is, we talk about building the field and spreading the vision. Like, their stories need to be illuminated, and they need investment because it's hard to do that. And
Well, take
yeah.
me there. Take me there, because you've said this now multiple times over the last, half an hour here, of of needing investment, of finding investment, either vehicles or, whatever it is. This is why we pay taxes. The money's there, right? Or it should be there. What kinds of investments are you talking about? And where does it usually come from?
Yeah. I think that, in the nonprofit world, in the world of philanthropy, folks are working hard to continue to rethink and reimagine and iterate how funds get invested. And it's really aligned with this vision, because a lot of what I see and I've heard is that creating like high participatory decision making is the way that they're going. So there's even some funders who are like saying, let's do high participatory grant making, where we are bringing the folks that we would give money to, helping us see what's out there, like help think, where should we invest? And that really goes along with this vision of empowering learners to be able to participate in their own education, like as highly respected, I'm driving. And so I think we're at a moment in time where things like that are all resonating, at many different levels. And that's part of the power. So one of the things that we've done is, by launching this cohort, by doing this exploration, by gathering people's stories and telling them, is work with funders to say, hey, there's a lot of amazing work out there that we'd like to share with you. And let's think about how we could create some kind of fund. And there are many, amazing, wonderful organizations already funding innovation and transformation. So I don't think that is actually the problem. What I think is difficult is, what our president, Kelly Young, she's an amazing storyteller, and she always uses as an example the if you were trying to make a rocket ship, you can't go to the place where they make Ford Mustangs and be like, hey, let's make a rocket ship here. That moment, so how do we create enough space so that we can make some full demonstrations of these kind of ecosystems, so that we could say, hey, public education, this is like research and development.
Sure.
Hey, this is a way it could work.
Yeah. Look, here's an MVP. Here's an MVP for this ecosystem. Like, what do you think about some seed funding? Let's go to your, let's do a round A, for this particular thing. And then guess what? We'll report back. We'll show outcomes, but it's just the time frame is probably 10 years, right? That we got to report back on. And so there you go. Like when you have investor dollars, the immediacy of return, that conversation. But there is slow capital out there. There's plenty of slow capital, and patient capital, I guess we call it.
I think it can be faster than you think, because don't forget, we don't have to start from nothing. This isn't about an absolute clear field. This is about people that have already been at work together.
Yeah. And not only that, but it's also about learners who are going to enter the system at different points, right? I think if you were to build a system like this, you would, especially if we're just, let's use the term K through 12, you'd have different students of different ages coming in. And so you'd be able to track different outcomes quite readily, I think.
Yeah.
I just think over time, whenever people, they speak about education and educational outcomes, holy smokes. I mean, you said it yourself, we're talking micro-credentialing and, universities, changing their ethos or changing their deliverables and those kinds of things. Finding patience. Again, it goes back to that observation of that collective deep breath of saying, hey, you know what? We know that we want to have something different here. So let's have a little patience with it.
That's a good point. It is.
Mhm.
And we're convening in Dallas next week with the cohort, and
Ooh, cool.
yeah, I'm excited. And the different inventors and their teams are going to come, and they're going to do consultancies with each other on their concept plans and get input. And when we were planning this, we were thinking, how can we make it really nice for them? Because these are the folks on the ground doing this important, powerful work. Like, what can we
Yeah.
do extra to make it a really great experience for them? And I think creating the environment where people can have that moment to dream together
Oh
is
yeah.
really important. And you're right, the funding and the investment has to say, it can't be like we need the immediate return. It has to say, we know this takes time.
Mhm. And we know it exists out there. I mean, there are mega funds out there that
Mhm.
are have the ability to put a significant investment in an experiment, or even or what looks like to be a established system to let it grow and thrive and then take hold, take root. Right.
Yeah,
Let
absolutely.
me take me to this, and because I'm fascinated to hear what your conversation is based on what I've heard in other conversations on this podcast and other places. As we think about a public system that could be applied on a national scale, that has aspects of this accessible, learner-centric, no wall kind of piece. One of the things that you've emphasized here is the ability for a locality to define its values and define what what the system would look like. How do we find a shared value system in a larger context? Even in, let's just even say, and I'm going to say, in a small state like Massachusetts, right? I come from a big state like Colorado, where spaces are wide and people are not necessarily talking to one another and whatnot. Like, what do you find there, or what are the conversations been around? Hey, we're all Coloradoans, or hey, we're all Texans. But, we may find in Dallas that we have a different set of values we want to portray than in San Antonio. Talk to me about that.
Yes. I think that the unifying view of asking people, what do we want for our children, is very helpful starting place. Like,
Mhm.
we want them to have the kind of um, childhood that gives them the experiences so that they feel, happy,
Sure, yeah, man.
joyful, like they
Safe,
know they
supported, happy, cared for,
yeah, they know who they are. And,
Mhm.
it's back to that John Dewey quote, like, education isn't about preparing for life. As education is life,
Mm.
we learn through experience. So to say, how could we create an environment so your child can grow up experiencing, you know, um, being a learner, like being respected, that their ideas are listened to, that we think of them in the community as participants, needed, like wanted,
Mm.
participants to
Mhm.
help us
Mhm.
solve difficult problems. And all of those experiences of growing up, to have those friendships, to have that accessibility, and to, intentionally take down the things that would marginalize people or not be inclusive. That's also a function of this kind of environment that would allow kids, every child, to feel that way. That is a very unifying place to begin this conversation. And I think one thing we're learning in our country is, how do we, from all of our like wide range of beliefs and ethnicities and cultures, how do we live together in a way that's wonderful for our kids?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
then our kids can be the kind of leaders who will help us, see what we can't see right now, but who will lead us into even more and better living. So I think that's the challenge that we have in front of us. And I think there's already people out there doing amazing work. And the heart of it is, relationships
Amen.
and being known, and
Mm.
having a chance to contribute.
Mm. I kind of want to leave our conversation here, right here. Like, I feel like that was a great, like, nice little bow that you just tied us in. Bobbi, tell me how, if somebody wants to continue this conversation with you, if somebody wants to get involved, whatever, like, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. You can check out educationreimagined.org. And we also have you'll see when you get on the website, we did like a little series of animated videos called The Big Idea. And you
Yeah.
can kind of see what this looks like in action. I was trying to be concrete-letic, but man, it's hard sometimes.
I'm going to actually, I have that URL right here, and I'm just going to throw it up on the screen so that it's
Great.
kept there for posterity.
Okay. Yeah, and we'd love to hear from you. We also have in our Build the Field area, we have learning lab trainings, we offer courses, we offer a community to come and be a part of with us. And so, we'd love to hear from folks who are doing learner-centered work, who want to learn more about ecosystems, who just have ideas. So yeah,
Awesome.
please reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for this great conversation and the wonderful questions. So I really enjoyed it.